And welcome to another edition of the conversation. Really, just had a blast last this morning, just talking to different candidates and learning about different platforms for different candidates. So really blessed to have some really good candidates, and we have another amazing candidate. Someone's done a lot of work for Ward Four, not just Ward Four, for the city. Um, a person who's very passionate about her job, and I think she takes it so seriously. And I just think it's such a blessing for her to be on the podcast. I want to thank Susan Nicastro joining us here on the podcast for running for re-election for Ward 4 City Council. Susan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Susan, first and foremost, for people who don't know you, just tell who's Susan, and for the people who are maybe new to the city, introduce yourself and kind of your platform.
Okay. Well, I am a 33-year resident of the city of Brockton. I've lived here since I married my husband, who's lived here his whole life. And he lived his whole life in Ward 4. We've raised two young adults in Ward 4. We have two sons. They're in their mid-20s now. And I am a practicing attorney. I've been an attorney for 40 years this year. God, that makes me old.
Seasoned, not old, seasoned.
Seasoned. That's a great word. Very good. As I said, I'm an attorney. For many years, I was 20 years. I was on the board of the Charity Guild, so I'm a volunteer. I have been an activist. I got involved in an issue on my side of town, and that lasted way too long. And I've also been a public servant for a while. I've served for 5 years on the planning board and the zoning board, and I've been the Ward 4 counselor since 2018.
So first and foremost, what keeps you going and going for re-election? What is your vision for the city for the next 2 years, and the reason why you're running?
Well, I'm running for re-election because many of my goals have not been attained yet for Ward 4 as well as the city. What do I hope for the city? I hope for it to operate functionally. I want all our children to be safe. Actually, not just the children, the adults especially, the seniors to be safe. I want us to feel good about living here, feel proud about living here. I want us to have things to do on the off times, good jobs that pay living wages. How's that for starters?
I think it's excellent. Well, let's talk about Ward 4 specifically. What are some of your visions for Ward 4? We're talking off air about the Southside. For the most part, Ward 4 is the Southside of Brockton. What are you seeing in that area that you want to bring in with businesses and what have you? What are some specific things you want to see in Ward 4?
Well, I'm seeing improvement, which is great. And I'd say the last 5 years, I've seen a lot of new restaurants, all kinds of good food, open up and down the corridor of Main Street. And that's good because it's bringing more people into our stretch of Main Street, the South Side. I would love to see a full-service supermarket. We have a supermarket, America's Best, right, in a plaza at the corner of Main and
Plain Street, I believe.
Meadowbrook. I think it's Meadowbrook. Mm-hmm. Yes. I'd like to see a full-scale store, but I think it's very unlikely, given the side of town and the traffic and all that. I'd like to see improved playgrounds, and I'm still working on playgrounds. I'm in there swinging.
In there swinging, no pun intended.
Exactly. I'd like to see more economic development for jobs paying a living wage. And there is something potentially coming. There was a warehouse built, this huge warehouse on one side of Oak Hill Way in Ward 4 recently, and the company that built it did it on spec because they thought they had a tenant lined up. That fell through, but they have another tenant coming. It would be a company that's relocating from Easton and combining their divisions. They would fill about half of that building, so there would still be more available. But it would be great. It would be an increase in taxes being revenue to the city, right, taxes being paid. They would employ some Brockton people, they said. And my fingers are crossed, fingers and toes are crossed. And coincidentally, this warehouse was built on the site of the proposed power plant.
What are you most proud of? And you look at it, your last, how many years have you been in office?
I'm just finishing my 6th year.
So you're looking back, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the customer service that I provide to my constituents and actually people beyond Ward 4 as well, because anybody who calls me, I try to help. Um, I'm proud. When I got in, people were feeling a little neglected, a little, what about my streets? What about my neighborhood? This kind of stuff. And I try very hard to address those issues. I'm not always effective, but I try really hard. I mean, some of it is just the nature of what the problem is. I'm proud of that. I think people feel a little more cared for, which is great.
What separates you from your opponents? Why should they choose you?
My experience, my background, my education, um, my way of handling things. For me, this is a full-time job right now. The first year that I was elected in 2018, I got two calls, one on the heels of the other, saying, "Hey, I'll hire you to represent me in my legal matter, but you have to vote the following way on the council." And I'm not doing that. So my husband and I talked it over, and I basically really reduced my law practice so as not to be compromised by anything. So, and I think that adds value. Um, I'm not I'm not looking to gain anything other than making the city better. And you and I talked about this the last time we met 2 years ago. I'm just in it to help other people, like truly a public servant. I don't have aspirations to higher office, although people call pretty regularly and ask me to run for higher office. I just want to make Brockton better. 6 years later, that's what it is.
That's really neat. I want you to talk about there's some big issues that are going on in Brockton the last couple months. A lot of things going new. So I just want to hit a few of them. Brockton Fairgrounds, there are hopes to get a purchase of the Carney piece of real estate over. Or actually, it's over in Ward 3, but it's obviously going to affect the whole city. How do you feel about that? There talks about $55 million. What are your thoughts about that? But in terms of Brockton purchasing that land and maybe having different developers.
Well, it's actually located, Newbie, in Ward 3, Ward 2, and Ward 1,
Right.
different little pieces of it. So there are several counselors who, will be influenced and, want to weigh in on this. I've been to several meetings talking about this. I thought it was a great opportunity. It is a great opportunity for the city. The city obtained an appraisal. $55 million was the price that came to be, looked at and kind of agreed on. There is a memorandum of understanding, which is not binding per se, but it's
For the viewers listening, what does that mean?
that means there's a writing. There's a writing about what the city would be willing to pay, what they'd be willing to sell it for, and some other little terms that are in there. But it's not a purchase and sales agreement. It's much weaker than that. We're all familiar with that from buying homes and condos and stuff. It just basically sets out some terms that the city was willing to put down on paper. But that's the city, that's the executive branch. Nothing is in stone or happens unless the city council approves it and appropriates the money to make the acquisition. So the orders to do that came into the city council. We had one hearing about it, and we haven't scheduled another hearing because all hell broke loose when we discovered after this little process with the fairgrounds began about the deficiency in the school department budget.
So are you in favor of purchasing the city purchasing that land?
I am in favor of it,
Okay.
but, and it's a big but,
Mhm.
but in caps, only if we can afford it.
Right.
And certainly we can't afford it. And what does it look like if we have a deficiency somewhere else?
Let's talk about that deficiency.
Yes.
And it is a school deficiency. I guess on the school committee side, that's $14 million. But we are a city, and the money's going to come from somewhere.
Right.
Is there a communications gap that probably needs to be better vetted between the council, school committee, superintendent, mayor? Mayor's the chair of the school committee. Superintendent presents a budget to the school committee approves the budget, sends it to the council approves the budget. That vetting process, was there something that was not vetted correctly? Who dropped the ball? Does that communication need to improve for that doesn't happen again?
We always need better communication. And this year I'm serving as council president. I'm looking into, and I'm going to get to the bottom of, all that happened leading up to the budget coming to us. And we believed that it was the budget that was the portion that deals with the schools was what the school committee approved. And that may not have been so. I don't know, I'm not sure, but I'm looking into it. And the whole thing about this deficiency is we're not really sure that the deficiency is 14.4 million. We're not really sure who is behind it. Um, we had the school committee in front of the finance committee last Monday night, and the mayor said that he learned about all of this, and he was quoted in the newspaper on August 8th. He mentioned it to me at the end of August, right before Labor Day weekend, and and since then, I have been waiting to receive from, I don't know, from the executive branch, from the schools department, something in writing notifying the city council that this has happened and that they're looking into it. Because it's very clear to me that how schools' money is spent is the responsibility of the schools, the school committee, as well as the school department. We meaning the city council, we approved the budget in June. We hand them their chunk of dough, based on the representations of all they're going to do to benefit our children in the schools.
And does that part need to change? Where where you hand off the money, and I don't know. I'm saying does that part where the money gets approved and it's just gone to the schools, which really there's not much oversight once it's approved from the school committee. Does that need to change?
Possibly, possibly. And there are state laws that are on point to that, but they have not been adopted by the city of Brockton, so possibly. And that's another thing we're looking into. And right now, the school department says they've just appointed a committee that includes some citizenry. They say they're going to identify someone to do an audit and then do their audit, okay? The city side has already found a company to do, it's a law firm, to do an investigation that includes a forensics audit. That was approved, and it's coming out of the funds of the law department. And that is going to look at the school side as well as the city side, I think, for FY23 and 22. They possibly need to go back further, like go back to before pre-COVID. And I'm all for that.
Do you think an advantage of you being a lawyer and looking at contracts and what have you, it benefits you on the council in terms of looking at different agreements and things like that? Your law background, do you think that that's to your advantage for situations like this?
Of course it does, and you can't do enough research, and I do an awful lot of research as a city councilor, and I have to so that I understand all the sides of an issue or a situation within the city. But it's really clear to me I'm not the city's lawyer. I don't advise the city, I don't advise the council. I just use it to figure out what's going on and go from there.
We got about a minute and a half left. Why don't you give an opportunity for you to talk about why people should vote for you and anything I left out that you want to include about things that you've accomplished, things that you see going forward in the next 2 years if you get reelected. I just want to give you the floor the next minute or so. Why should people vote for you to be reelected?
Okay. I'm running to be elected for 2 more years. That would be my fourth term as, boy, doesn't time go by, as Ward 4 City Councilor. I think I am the best person for the job, and I hope that the residents of Ward 4 think so too. I have the education, the experience, the background. Now I have a track record of doing good. I've weighed in. I've passed some ordinances to help improve the quality of our lives. I've encouraged and supported new housing in Ward 4 because the city needs more housing for its residents. I'm amenable to affordable housing and workforce housing, and you have to be because, as everyone knows, the value of our housing has exceeded what people make. Our living wages have not caught up to what it costs to buy a house or to rent in the city of Brockton, and so I try hard to work with people on those issues. I've spent way too much time dealing with traffic issues and our streets, our roads and our streets. There's 300 miles of roadway in Brockton, and I think most of it in Ward 4 needs to be redone. And so I'm constantly working on that and encouraging and hoping. I just feel with all of the information that I've gathered and the knowledge that I have over these past 6 years, I can continue to use it to benefit Ward 4. And so I respectfully ask Ward 4 residents to vote and to vote for me.
Listen, thank you so much. I can feel the passion just in when you're talking about, it's personal for you. This is, Ward 4. It's in the city of Brockton. It's something special in your heart. So, one, wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
In everything you do. And thank you for the viewers who are listening right now on the conversation. Please take the opportunity to check out our website and see the different stuff that we do. Where our slogan is giving a voice to the voiceless. Check out our documentary work. If you want something, a donation, go to newproductions.com and do that as well. So
and vote.
And vote. November 7th.
That's right.
As Barack Obama says, don't boo, vote. And I think that's a great. So, don't complain and vote. And we want to see you at the ballot. So continue to check out our podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube page to check out all the different podcasts we're having. And also like us on Facebook, New Productions. Thank you for the listeners out there. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, New.